The massive crystal chamber stretched high above the gathered representatives of 1,000 worlds. Ambassador Zethkari stood at the center, his purple skin gleaming under the artificial suns that lit the Galactic Council chambers. His 4 arms gestured dramatically as he spoke about his latest conquest proposal. The third planet of the Sol system presents an ideal opportunity, Zethkari announced, his voice echoing through translation devices. The inhabitants call themselves humans. They are divided into competing nations, lack unified planetary defense, and possess primitive technology barely capable of reaching their own moon. Elder Morden shifted uncomfortably in his biochair, the ancient being's tentacles curling with unease. He had spent weeks reviewing the Vorthan scout reports, and something bothered him deeply about these creatures called humans. The preliminary psychological profiles showed disturbing patterns that reminded him of old legends, stories his grandmother had told him about a warrior race that once challenged the gods themselves. Their weapons are chemical projectiles and crude explosives, Zethkari continued. They fight among themselves constantly. Most of their population centers are undefended against orbital assault. The conquest should take no more than 7 standard days. Council member Yithora from the Peaceful Centauri Federation raised a webbed hand. What of their response to the initial survey? Did they detect your scout ships? Zethkari's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. A few atmospheric disturbances on their primitive detection systems. Nothing more. They dismissed our presence as weather phenomena. On Earth, Marine Captain Jake Sullivan was running his men through desert combat training at Camp Pendleton when the first real scout ship passed overhead. The vessel was cloaked, invisible to human eyes, but it cast a brief shadow that caught Sullivan's attention. He paused, scanning the clear blue sky with the instincts that had kept him alive through 3 tours in Afghanistan. "Something wrong, Captain?" asked Sergeant Bill Murphy, following Sullivan's gaze upward. "Probably nothing," Sullivan replied, but he made a mental note to check with radar control later. In his experience, the feeling that something was wrong usually meant something was wrong. 3,000 miles away at NORAD, Air Force Lieutenant Lisa Martinez stared at her screens with growing frustration. For the past month, she had been tracking intermittent contacts that appeared and vanished before secondary systems could confirm them. Her supervisor insisted they were atmospheric anomalies, possibly related to solar activity, but Martinez had been tracking aircraft for 6 years. "These contacts moved with purpose. Still chasing ghosts, Martinez?" asked Lieutenant Tony Garcia as he relieved her for the night shift. "These aren't ghosts," Martinez muttered, pointing to the data on her screen. "Look at the flight patterns. They're conducting systematic reconnaissance sweeps of every major population center on the continent." Garcia shrugged. "If they were enemy aircraft, don't you think someone would have noticed them by now?" Martinez didn't answer, but she copied the data to a secure drive anyway. Something told her this information might be important someday. At MIT, Dr. Kevin Roberts had been losing sleep over the electromagnetic signatures his equipment kept detecting. His colleague, Professor Amy Davis, thought his theories about extraterrestrial surveillance were damaging his academic reputation. "Kevin, you're talking about aliens," Amy said during their weekly coffee meeting. "Do you understand how that sounds to the tenure committee? I'm talking about artificial electromagnetic patterns that don't match any known human technology," Kevin replied, stirring his coffee absently. "The signals are too organized to be natural phenomena, too advanced to be human, and too consistent to be equipment malfunction." Amy sighed. "Even if you're right, what are you going to do about it? Call the government? They'll think you're crazy." Kevin had already considered that option. He had also considered the possibility that he was crazy. But the data didn't lie, and every day brought new evidence that something was watching Earth from the shadows. Back in the council chambers, Elder Morden finally spoke up. "Ambassador Zethkari, I have reviewed your scouts' behavioral analysis of these humans. There are concerning patterns in their historical records." "Such as?" Zethkari asked, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "They appear to have an unusual relationship with conflict," Morden said carefully. "Unlike most species we have encountered, humans seem to become more dangerous when cornered, not less. Their wars have grown more destructive over time, not less frequent. They have never surrendered completely to any enemy, even when facing overwhelming odds." Council member Vexenil from the militant Rigel Consortium laughed, the sound like grinding metal. You worry about primitives who fight with chemical weapons? Our plasma cannons will scatter them like leaves in a storm. I worry about primitives who split atoms for weapons, Morden replied quietly. I worry about a species that has never met a challenge they did not eventually overcome. I worry about warriors who see defeat as a learning experience rather than an ending. Zethkari's voice carried the confidence of a being who had conquered 17 worlds. Elder Mordun, with respect, your concerns are noted but irrelevant. The Vorthon Empire has subjugated thousands of species. These humans will be no different. Perhaps, Mordun said, his ancient eyes fixed on the holographic display of Earth rotating slowly in the chamber center. But consider this. Every species we have conquered accepted defeat when faced with superior technology. Have you found any evidence in human history of such acceptance? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Zethkari's mandibles clicked again, but this time with less confidence. He had read the historical files. Human conflicts were brutal, prolonged affairs where neither side seemed capable of complete surrender. Even their defeated enemies often continued fighting as underground resistance movements for years or decades. Superstition, Zethkari finally declared. Fear of myths and legends. The Council will see wisdom in swift action. The vote was called. Species after species voted to approve the invasion. Only a handful of the older civilizations, those who remembered the ancient warnings about warrior races, voted against the proposal. It was not enough. As the council session ended, Elder Morden watched the hologram of Earth continue its slow rotation. Somewhere on that blue and white marble, 6 billion humans were going about their daily lives, unaware that their fate had just been decided by beings they had never met. Morden hoped he was wrong about the humans. He hoped they would surrender quickly and save everyone the trouble of a prolonged conflict. But something deep in his ancient memory whispered that the Galactic Council had just made a terrible mistake. The invasion was scheduled to begin in 30 standard days. Elder Morden began composing his personal log, documenting his concerns for future historians. He had a feeling someone would need to understand how everything went so wrong. The first Vorthon dropships broke through Earth's atmosphere at dawn, their dark hulls gleaming like deadly raindrops against the morning sky. General Paul Mitchell was drinking his second cup of coffee at the Pentagon, when every alarm in the building began screaming at once. Sir, we have multiple unknown aircraft descending over Washington, New York, Los Angeles, and 17 other major cities, reported Colonel Jane Foster. Her face pale as she read from the tactical display. They're not responding to radio contact. Mitchell set down his coffee cup and watched the radar screens fill with contacts. Each ship was the size of a city block, moving with impossible grace through the atmosphere. Scramble everything we have. I want fighters in the air in 5 minutes. Sir, our pilots are reporting that their weapons have no effect, Foster said, her voice tight with stress. The enemy ships have some kind of energy shield. 3,000 miles away in New York City, Police Officer Danny Clark was directing morning traffic in Times Square when the shadow fell across the intersection. He looked up to see a massive alien vessel settling between the skyscrapers like a metallic mountain. Civilians began screaming and running in all directions. Clark reached for his radio. This is Officer Clark requesting immediate backup at Times Square. We have some kind of aircraft making an unauthorized landing. Before dispatch could respond, panels opened along the ship's hull, and figures began dropping to the street. They were tall, purple-skinned beings in advanced armor, carrying weapons that hummed with energy. One of them pointed its weapon at a fleeing businessman and fired. The man simply vanished in a flash of light. Forget the backup, Clark muttered, drawing his service pistol. This is Officer Clark. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. I repeat, we are under attack. The nearest alien turned toward Clark, raising its weapon. Clark put 3 rounds center mass, watching his bullets spark harmlessly off the creature's armor. The alien tilted its head. Seeming almost curious about the primitive projectile weapon, Clark dove behind a taxi as energy blasts scorched the pavement where he had been standing. All units, this is Clark. The hostiles have energy weapons and body armor. Standard ammunition is ineffective. He keyed his radio again. I'm implementing emergency evacuation protocols. Civilians need to get underground or into reinforced buildings. Instead of running, Clark began moving from cover to cover, using his radio to coordinate other officers and direct civilian evacuations. The aliens had expected panic and chaos. They got organized resistance from the first minute of contact. In Montana, Rancher Susan Hayes was feeding her cattle when she saw the streak of light arc across the sky and crash into the hills near her property. She climbed into her pickup truck and drove toward the crash site, more curious than afraid. What she found was a camp. Dozens of purple-skinned aliens were setting up some kind of base with energy weapons and strange equipment. Susan watched from behind a ridge, counting enemies and noting their positions with the same patience she used when hunting elk. She drove back to her ranch and called her neighbors. "Bill, this is Susan. Remember that survival training we did last year? It's time to put it to use." Within hours, every rancher, hunter, and veteran within 50 miles knew about the alien base. They began arriving at Susan's ranch with hunting rifles, farm equipment, and decades of experience fighting in difficult terrain. "These things might have fancy weapons," said retired Army Sergeant Lou Peters, studying the alien base through binoculars. "But they don't know this country like we do." The Vorthons had expected to face primitive militaries with predictable tactics. They had not planned for farmers with deer rifles who knew every rock and tree for miles around. Across the globe, similar scenes played out. In Tokyo, office workers used the city's complex subway system to mount hit-and-run attacks against alien occupation forces. In London, retired Special Air Service soldiers organized resistance cells using techniques learned in Northern Ireland and Afghanistan. In Mumbai, street children who knew every back alley and hidden passage became an invisible network of scouts and saboteurs. Commander Veltar stood in the command center of his flagship, watching reports flow in from across the planet. According to the pre-invasion intelligence, human resistance should have collapsed within hours. Instead, it was growing stronger. "Sir, we are experiencing 30% higher casualties than projected," reported his intelligence officer. "The humans are not responding as predicted." "Explain," Veltar ordered, his forearms crossed in irritation. "They are not surrendering when faced with superior firepower. Instead, they are adapting their tactics and using our technology against us. Teams in several cities have reported humans salvaging our equipment from destroyed vehicles." Veltar studied the tactical displays, showing resistance activity across the planet. Red markers indicated active combat zones, and there were far too many of them. "What about their military forces?" "Still actively engaging. Their aircraft are ineffective against our shields, but their ground forces are proving remarkably resilient. They have abandoned conventional tactics in favor of guerrilla warfare." Back at the Galactic Council, Elder Morden received the first situation reports with growing dread. His aide, a young Centauri named Plexani, read from the data tablet with disbelief. "Elder, the invasion is behind schedule. Fourth-hand forces have established beachheads in most major population centers, but they have been unable to secure rural areas or eliminate resistance networks." "What are the human casualty reports?" Morden asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Lower than expected, sir. The humans appear to have implemented emergency protocols very quickly. They are using underground transportation systems, reinforced buildings, and natural terrain features for protection." Morden's tentacles curled with anxiety. "And Vorthan casualties?" "Higher than any previous invasion, sir. The humans are targeting supply lines, communication equipment, and isolated units. They appear to be studying Vorthan tactics and developing countermeasures." In New York, Officer Clark had linked up with National Guard units and was coordinating urban warfare tactics he had never trained for, but somehow understood intuitively. The aliens controlled the main streets, but humans owned the sewers, the subways, and the spaces between buildings. "They're good at fighting in the open," Clark explained to Lieutenant Sarah Kim of the National Guard. "But they don't understand cities. They think controlling the major intersections means they control the territory." Clark pointed to a map of Lower Manhattan marked with red and blue positions. "We let them have the big streets. We hit them from below, from above, from directions they don't expect. We make them afraid to send out small patrols." Lieutenant Kim studied the map. "You're talking about turning Manhattan into a maze where they can't use their advantages." "Exactly," Clark replied. "Make them fight on our terms instead of theirs." The tactics were spreading. Across the planet, humans were learning that superior technology meant nothing if you could not bring it to bear effectively. They began forcing the aliens to fight in close quarters in bad weather, in terrain that favored defenders over attackers. By the end of the first week, the Vorthon Empire's certain victory had become an uncertain struggle. The humans were not just surviving the invasion, They were learning from it. Commander Veltar sent his first request for reinforcements, something that had never been necessary in any previous conquest. The humans, he reported, were proving far more adaptable than anyone had anticipated. Elder Morden read the reports and began preparing for an emergency council session. His worst fears were coming true. The humans were not behaving like a conquered people. They were behaving like a species that viewed the invasion as a learning opportunity. The Galactic Council was about to discover what happened when you attacked a world full of beings who treated every challenge as a chance to become stronger. 3 weeks into the invasion, Commander Veltar stood before a holographic map of Earth that looked like a medical chart showing a spreading infection. Red zones marked areas under Vorthan control, but they were shrinking daily, replaced by yellow contested zones and green areas where human resistance had grown too strong to suppress. "Sir, we have lost contact with Forward Base 7 in the Montana sector," reported Lieutenant Caxavel, his voice tight with something Veltar had never heard from a Vorthan officer before. Uncertainty. "How many troops?" Veltar asked, studying the display. 47 soldiers, sir. They were overrun by approximately 200 humans using primitive projectile weapons and farming equipment. Veltar's mandibles clicked in disbelief. Farming equipment? The humans appear to be weaponizing everything, sir. They have turned construction vehicles into armored fighting machines, agricultural chemicals into explosives, and civilian communication networks into military coordination systems. In the Colorado Rockies, Army Ranger Captain Ryan Moore crouched behind a fallen tree, watching the alien patrol through his binoculars. Beside him, MIT graduate student Claire Johnson finished making adjustments to the captured Vorthan energy rifle they had been experimenting with for the past week. "I think I understand how their power system works," Claire whispered. "It's not magic. It's just really advanced physics. And if I'm right about the energy coupling mechanism, we can build something even better." Moore lowered his binoculars. "Better how?" Claire held up the modified weapon. "Their weapons are designed for their physiology, but humans have different muscle memory, different reflexes. I've recalibrated the targeting system for human neural patterns and reduced the power consumption by routing energy through multiple pathways instead of one." She handed the weapon to Moore. "Try it." Moore sighted on a distant rock and squeezed the trigger. The energy blast was twice as bright as the original weapon and left a crater where the rock had been. "How did you do that?" "I didn't try to copy their technology," Claire explained. "I tried to improve it. Humans don't just use tools. We make them better." Their guerrilla unit had grown from 12 scattered soldiers to over 300 volunteers, including hunters, park rangers, survivalists, and local militia members. They had established a hidden base in an abandoned mine shaft, complete with workshops where captured alien technology was being reverse-engineered and improved. Lieutenant Ben Parker led his Navy SEAL team through the dark waters beneath the Pacific Vorthan command ship. The aliens had never considered that humans might attack from underwater, assuming that any intelligent species would focus on air and land operations. "Remember, we're not trying to sink it," Parker whispered into his underwater communicator. "We just need to get inside and prove it can be done." The SEAL team attached magnetic charges to the ship's lower hull, not to destroy it but to create entry points. When the charges detonated, they opened holes that led directly into the ship's lower maintenance areas. "Breach successful," Parker reported as his team swam through the gaps. "We are inside the enemy vessel." The Vorthans had built their ships assuming attacks would come from above or from the sides. They had never considered that an enemy might attack from directly below, swimming through water to reach vulnerable points no other species had ever targeted. In Chicago, Dr. Patricia Lee worked in a hidden laboratory beneath the ruins of the University Medical Center. Her discovery 3 days earlier had changed everything about humanity's understanding of their own capabilities. "It's not that we're immune to their telepathic control," she explained to the group of resistance leaders gathered around her workbench. "It's that our minds work differently than anything they've encountered before." Former NASA engineer Greg Thompson leaned forward. "Explain it in terms we can use." Patricia pointed to brain scan images on her computer screen. "Most species they've conquered have highly organized, predictable thought patterns. Humans are different. Our minds are chaotic, creative, constantly jumping between ideas. When they try to establish telepathic control, Our thoughts create interference. Telecommunications expert Maria Rodriguez understood immediately. You're saying we jam their mental communications just by thinking? More than that, Patricia replied. I think we can learn to do it deliberately. If we can train groups of people to think in specific patterns, we might be able to disrupt their coordination across entire battle zones. The news spread through resistance networks with stunning speed. Within days, humans in every major city were conducting experiments in coordinated thinking. They discovered that groups of people focusing on the same complex problem could create psychic static that made Vorthan telepathic communication impossible. The aliens found their most significant advantage neutralized by an enemy that had turned its own mental chaos into a weapon. Back on the Vorthan flagship, Commander Veltar received reports that made no sense according to everything his species understood about warfare. Sir, the humans have somehow learned to interfere with our telepathic battle coordination, his communications officer reported. Units across the planet are reporting communication blackouts in areas with large human populations. How is that possible? Veltar demanded. We don't know, sir. Our scientists theorize that human neural patterns are fundamentally incompatible with our telepathic frequencies. Veltar studied the tactical displays showing the deteriorating situation across Earth. Human resistance was not only surviving, it was growing stronger and more sophisticated every day. What about our technology advantage? Compromised, sir. The humans are reverse engineering our equipment and producing hybrid weapons that outperform our original designs. They appear to be improving our technology faster than we can deploy countermeasures. Lieutenant Parker's SEAL team had successfully infiltrated 3 Vorthan vessels, proving that the ship's underwater defenses were non-existent. Within hours, naval forces around the world were adapting his tactics, attacking the alien fleet from directions they had never considered defending against. Captain Moore's mountain guerrillas had grown into a coordinated network spanning 7 states, using captured and improved alien technology to conduct operations that forced the Vorthans to redirect significant resources from offensive operations to defensive ones. Dr. Lee's discovery about human mental interference had been weaponized by resistance cells everywhere, turning every gathering of humans into a potential communication dead zone for the invaders. At the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were being called daily as reports arrived of the impossible situation developing on Earth. Elder Morden's warnings were no longer being dismissed as superstition. The humans are not responding to the invasion as conquered subjects, reported Ambassador Zethkari. His confidence completely evaporated. They are responding as if this were an opportunity to advance their civilization. Council member Yathara from Centauri reviewed the latest intelligence reports with growing alarm. They are studying Vorthan technology, improving it, and using it against its creators. They have turned the invasion into a learning experience. What are you requesting? Elder Morden asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Immediate reinforcement of the invasion fleet, Zethkari replied, or authorization to withdraw our forces before the situation becomes more complicated. Elder Mordun's tentacles curled around his seat. More complicated than a species that treats superior technology as a puzzle to solve rather than a reason to surrender? The council chamber fell silent as representatives from 1,000 worlds considered the implications. The Vorthan Empire, one of the galaxy's most successful military powers, was requesting help to conquer a single planet of primitives. There is something else, Zethkari added reluctantly. Our intelligence reports suggest the humans are beginning to ask questions about what lies beyond their solar system. They are displaying curiosity about galactic civilization. The silence in the council chamber became deafening. A species that could reverse engineer alien technology, in weeks and turn mental chaos into a tactical advantage, was now becoming interested in interstellar travel. Elder Morden finally spoke the words everyone was thinking. We have not conquered them. We have educated them. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humanity learned it was not alone in the universe and decided to do something about it. News of humanity's resistance spread through the galactic communication networks like wildfire. On distant worlds, species that had been conquered by the Vorthan Empire in mere days watched in amazement as reports continued to arrive from the small blue planet in the Sol system. The impossible was happening. Humans were not just fighting back, they were winning. Captain Jake Sullivan stood in the command center of what had once been a Vorthan forward base in California. His joint task force of international military units had captured the facility 3 days earlier, using tactics that would have been impossible without human adaptability and Vorthan technology. "Sir, the engineering team has successfully interfaced our computer systems with their data networks," reported Lieutenant Colonel Kim Patel, a British signals intelligence officer who had become essential to their technology integration efforts. "We now have access to their communication protocols." Sullivan studied the alien displays that had been modified with human interface systems. "What are they saying to each other?" "They're confused, sir. Their field commanders are reporting tactical situations that their military doctrine says should be impossible. Apparently, no species has ever successfully reverse-engineered Vorthan technology during an active invasion." Across the room, aerospace engineer Nicole Adams worked with a team of international scientists and technicians to understand the captured Vorthan fighters. The sleek alien craft sat in the hangar like metallic sculptures, their advanced systems slowly yielding their secrets to human curiosity and determination. "The propulsion system is based on controlled gravity manipulation," Nicole explained to Captain Sullivan. "It's incredibly advanced, but the principles aren't beyond human understanding. Give me another week, and I think we can not only pilot these ships but improve them." "Improve them how?" Sullivan asked. Nicole pointed to her analysis charts. "Their design assumes a species with 4 arms and telepathic coordination. Human pilots have different reflexes, different spatial reasoning abilities. If we modify the control systems for human neurology and add some redundancy to compensate for our lack of telepathy, these ships could be faster and more maneuverable than the originals." The breakthrough came when former Air Force pilot Captain Steve Carter managed to take a modified Vorthan fighter into space. His mission was simple: prove that humans could operate in the environment where the Vorthans held absolute advantage. "Control, this is Carter." His voice crackled through the communication system as his modified fighter climbed through Earth's atmosphere. "I have visual contact with the orbital command platform." The Vorthan orbital station hung in space like a crystal city, massive and seemingly impregnable. Carter's small fighter approached it with a flight pattern that confused the alien defenders. Instead of the predictable attack vectors their computers expected, Carter flew with the intuitive unpredictability that made human pilots dangerous. "Beginning attack run," Carter reported, his modified fighter dancing between defensive energy blasts that couldn't track his erratic movements. The station's defenses had been designed to stop fourth-hand vessels piloted by beings with predictable tactical thinking. They had never encountered a human pilot who treated physics as a suggestion rather than a rule. Carter's attack damaged the orbital platform's main communication array, sending shockwaves through the Vorthan fleet. For the first time in the invasion, humans had successfully struck at alien forces in space itself. The psychological impact was enormous. Across the Vorthan Empire, conquered species began asking questions about the humans who could learn alien technology faster than their creators could deploy it. On the crystal world of Velthar Prime, the conquered Crystalline Federation monitored the galactic communication networks with growing excitement. Elder Crystal Singer Harmonix shared the information with her resistance cell. "The humans have held out for 4 months, she communicated through harmonic vibrations. 4 months against the same empire that conquered us in 6 hours. Her lieutenant, a younger crystal being named Resonance, pulsed with cautious hope. "Are the reports accurate? They are truly fighting back successfully?" "More than fighting back," Harmonix replied. "They are adapting Vorthan technology and using it more effectively than the Vorthans themselves. They have turned the invasion into an educational opportunity." The news spread to 17 worlds where Vorthan rule had seemed permanent and unchangeable. Subject species began studying the human resistance methods, learning from reports that filtered through the galactic networks. At the Galactic Council, Elder Morden received Ambassador Zethkari's latest report with a mixture of vindication and terror. His warnings had been proven correct, but the implications were staggering. "The invasion force is requesting immediate withdrawal authorization," Zethkari reported, his confidence completely shattered. "Human resistance has evolved beyond our ability to suppress it using conventional methods." "What about unconventional methods?" asked Council Member Vexnil, the militant representative who had laughed at Morden's earlier warnings. Orbital bombardment would work, Zethkari admitted, but it would also eliminate the infrastructure we intended to capture. Moreover, the humans have demonstrated the ability to adapt to our technology so quickly that any delay might result in them developing their own orbital capabilities. The council chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The idea that a primitive species could develop space technology in months rather than centuries challenged everything the galactic community believed about technological advancement. There is something else, Zethkari continued reluctantly. Our intelligence reports indicate that humans are actively studying not just our technology, but our culture, our government structure, and our territorial boundaries. They are asking questions about galactic civilization that suggest they are planning for post-invasion scenarios. Elder Morden's ancient eyes fixed on the Vorthon ambassador. They are planning to join galactic society rather than be conquered by it. Worse, Zethkari replied. Our xenopsychologists believe they are planning to reform galactic society. Human political philosophy appears to be fundamentally different from anything we have encountered. They seem to believe that governance should be based on the consent of the governed, rather than the strength of the governors. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud, a species that could reverse engineer alien technology in weeks, improve it beyond its original specifications, and then ask questions about galactic politics was not just dangerous, it was revolutionary. On Earth, Dr. Patricia Lee's research had evolved beyond simple telepathic interference. Working with captured Vorthon scientists who had been taken prisoner, she was learning about the broader galactic community. There are thousands of intelligent species, she explained to the International Science Council, that had formed to coordinate human technological advancement. Most of them live under some form of imperial control. The galaxy operates on a feudal system where stronger species dominate weaker ones. Former NASA engineer Greg Thompson studied the star charts they had extracted from Vorthon databases. How long would it take us to reach other star systems using their technology? With the improvements Nicole's team has made to their propulsion systems. Months rather than years, Patricia replied. But there's something more important. The galactic community seems to be built on the assumption that technological advancement happens slowly, over thousands of years. They're not prepared for a species that can learn and adapt as quickly as we can. Captain Sullivan received reports from resistance cells around the world. The pattern was consistent everywhere. Humans were not just surviving the invasion, they were thriving. Every challenge the Vorthons presented became an opportunity for growth, learning, and advancement. Sir, we've established communication with captured Vorthon personnel, reported Major Lisa Park, his intelligence officer. They're willing to share information about galactic civilization in exchange for better treatment. What are they telling us? Sullivan asked. That no species in galactic history has ever successfully resisted Vorthon invasion, Park replied. They're more confused than we are about how this is happening. The most disturbing report came from the Vorthon prisoners themselves. According to their testimonies, the galactic community was buzzing with rumors about the humans. Species that had been conquered centuries ago were beginning to believe that resistance was possible. Elder Morden's final report to the Emergency Council session was grim. We have not witnessed the conquest of a primitive world. We have witnessed the announcement of a new galactic power. The humans are not just defending their planet. They are preparing to join the galactic community as equals rather than subjects. Council member Yathara reviewed the latest intelligence reports. What do they want? Based on their questions and behavior patterns, Mordun replied, they want to explore, to learn, to grow, and to help other species do the same. They appear to believe that the galaxy would be better if governed by cooperation rather than domination. The silence in the council chamber was deafening. The galaxy had expected to gain another conquered world. Instead, it was about to meet a species that thought the entire galactic order needed improvement. 6 months after the first Vorthon dropships had darkened Earth's skies, Admiral Janet Phillips stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, humanity's first starship. The vessel was a masterpiece of hybrid technology, combining human engineering principles with captured Vorthon systems that had been improved beyond their original specifications. All systems show green. Admiral, reported her chief science officer, Dr. Alex Turner. The drive core is operating at 112% of theoretical Vorthon efficiency. Phillips nodded, studying the star charts displayed on screens that mixed human interface design with alien technology. How long to Alpha Centauri? 3 weeks, ma'am. The navigation team believes we can reduce that to 2 weeks once we optimize the gravity manipulation systems during flight. Behind them, the command crew represented the best of international cooperation that had emerged from the invasion. Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka from Japan managed communications. Major Carlos Mendez from Mexico oversaw tactical systems, and engineer Sarah Walsh from Ireland kept the hybrid technologies running smoothly. The war, if it could still be called that, had ended not with surrender but with withdrawal. The Vorthon Empire had quietly pulled its forces back to their ships and departed Earth's orbit, leaving behind enough equipment and personnel to satisfy human curiosity about galactic civilization. Commander Veltar had personally requested assignment to the Human Diplomatic Contact Team, claiming that understanding humanity had become essential to Vorthon's strategic planning. His real motivation was simpler. He wanted to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. Admiral Phillips, Veltar said, his forearms folded in a gesture that humans had learned indicated respectful attention. The Galactic Council has confirmed that they will receive your diplomatic mission. However, I must warn you that your arrival will cause considerable disruption to established protocols. Phillips turned to face the Vorthon commander, who had become humanity's unlikely guide to galactic politics. What kind of disruption? No species has ever demanded to address the Council as equals immediately following a successful resistance to conquest, Veltar explained. The political implications are significant. Dr. Turner looked up from his console. Significant how? Veltar's mandibles clicked nervously. 17 subject worlds have declared independence since news of your resistance spread through the galactic networks. The Rigel Consortium has lost control of 3 star systems. The Centauri Federation is experiencing internal political upheaval as their population demands more representative government. Phillips absorbed this information calmly. The invasion had taught humanity that they were not alone in the universe, but it had also taught them that the galactic community was built on principles that many humans found morally unacceptable. Commander Veltar, what would happen if we simply announced that we consider all sentient beings to have the right to self-determination? Phillips asked. Veltar's purple skin darkened to an almost black shade which humans had learned indicated extreme distress. Admiral, such a statement would effectively declare ideological war against every imperial power in the galaxy. Would it? Phillips mused. Or would it simply offer an alternative to the current system? On Earth, the changes continued to accelerate. The invasion had united humanity in ways that centuries of diplomacy had failed to achieve. The United Nations had been reorganized into the Terran Federation, with representation based on population and contribution to planetary defense, rather than historical political boundaries. Captain Jake Martinez, formerly the Marine captain who had first noticed alien scouts, now commanded the Ground Forces Training Center where humans and friendly alien refugees learned to work together. The facility had become a symbol of humanity's approach to galactic relations. Cooperation based on mutual respect rather than domination. The Crystalline Federation representatives are adapting well to our training methods, reported Colonel Susan Hayes, the former Montana rancher, who had become one of Earth's most effective guerrilla warfare instructors. They're particularly interested in our concepts of distributed leadership and adaptive tactics. Martinez nodded. What about the Vorthon volunteers? More difficult, Hayes admitted. Their entire culture is based on hierarchical thinking. The idea that lower-ranking individuals can make tactical decisions independently is challenging for them to accept. But they're learning? They're trying, Hayes replied. I think they're beginning to understand that our success wasn't due to superior technology or greater numbers. It was because every human could think and act independently while still working toward common goals. The training center had become more than a military facility. It was humanity's first attempt at teaching galactic civilization a different way of organizing society. Representatives from dozens of species came to study human methods, and many returned home with ideas that challenged traditional power structures. At the Galactic Council, the situation had moved beyond simple political disruption to fundamental crisis. Elder Morden addressed an emergency, session where 3/4 of the member species were dealing with internal rebellions inspired by human resistance methods. The humans have not simply defended their world, Morden explained to the assembled representatives. They have demonstrated that rapid technological and social advancement is possible when individuals are free to innovate and adapt. Ambassador Zethkari, whose invasion proposal had triggered the crisis, sat in disgrace among the Vorthan delegation. His empire was fragmenting as subject worlds demanded the same freedoms that humanity had defended. "What do they want from us?" asked Council Member Yathara, her aquatic form rippling with agitation. "Based on their preliminary communications," Morden replied, "they want to join the galactic community as partners rather than subjects or rulers. They propose a fundamental restructuring of galactic civilization based on voluntary cooperation rather than imperial domination." "And if we refuse their proposals?" asked Vexneal, though his militant posture had been considerably diminished by the collapse of his own territorial holdings. "Then they will continue building their own interstellar civilization and offering alternatives to any species that wishes to join them," Morden said. "Their technology is advancing faster than our ability to track it. Their diplomatic outreach is already destabilizing our established order. We can choose to work with them or watch them work around us." The UES Liberty completed its journey to Alpha Centauri ahead of schedule, establishing humanity's first interstellar colony in a system that had been designated as neutral territory for the diplomatic meeting. The speed of human expansion shocked even those who had been tracking their progress. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from the Galactic Council," reported Lieutenant Commander Tanaka. "They're requesting immediate talks to establish formal diplomatic relations." Phillips smiled. "Tell them we're ready to discuss the future of galactic civilization." "And Tanaka? Make sure they understand that we're not interested in joining the current system. We're here to help build a better one." Dr. Turner looked up from his analysis of local star systems. "Admiral, the sensor readings from this region show signs of at least 12 habitable worlds within 50 light-years. If our colonization technology continues to improve at current rates, we could establish a significant interstellar presence within 5 years." "That's the idea, Alex," Phillips replied. "We're not just exploring space. We're demonstrating that rapid, peaceful expansion is possible when species work together instead of trying to conquer each other." The first human diplomatic mission to the Galactic Council would carry more than just Earth's greetings to the galaxy. It would carry proof that humanity's approach to civilization could work on an interstellar scale. Elder Morden prepared his final report on the human situation as the Council debated how to respond to humanity's proposals. His conclusion was simple. The galaxy had expected to gain another conquered world, but instead it had encountered a species that was determined to revolutionize galactic civilization. The humans had turned an invasion into a learning experience, conquest into cooperation, and defeat into an opportunity to build something better. They had proven that rapid advancement was possible when beings were free to think, innovate, and work together. The Council had been right to whisper their warnings. Invading Earth had been a fatal error, not because humanity was too strong to conquer, but because they were too innovative to contain. Now the galaxy would discover what happened when a species that treated every challenge as an opportunity for growth decided to help everyone else do the same. The age of galactic empires was ending. The age of galactic cooperation was about to begin, and humanity was eager to teach anyone who wanted to learn how to build a civilization based on freedom, innovation, and mutual respect rather than fear, domination, and control. The stars were no longer the limit. They were just the beginning.